doing? What is this big fuss about the Freeway corridor?
The Freeway corridor is a key to our financial revenue for our city, stability. And that's been a key that our city's been looking at for many years.
This is a main revenue corridor that could benefit the Yucaipians and the community of Yucaipa.
One of the challenges here in the Freeway Corridor specific plan is that the specific plan area is actually split into two different areas, or in other words, it's served by two different water agencies.
Why do we have to go to Redlands to shop and nobody from Redlands comes to shop here?
There's something attracting people to go to those places and shop there. The bottom line is there needs to be a trigger to create the backbone of infrastructure so that development can occur.
From the day one was always a point of consideration of how do we manage the growth and not have, a nightmare traffic situation.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Markarian here with Markarian Law Group, and this is the Chris Markarian Podcast. This is the podcast where we highlight community service before client and customer service. We are an organization that helps our clients before they're involved in an accident and after they're done dealing with the aftermath of an accident. We highlight the community organizations and individuals that give back to our community. I am joined with, I believe, the very famous and most important people that I know in our town. So starting with our mayor, John Thorpe. Thank you so much, Honorable Mayor, for joining me today.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And Jennifer, I see you every week at the Rotary meetings. And Jennifer Crawford is also here with us. She is our acting
Interim.
I know.
Interim acting.
She's running the city of Yucaipa in every way she can and holding it together before her upcoming retirement, which is
December 30th.
That's right. Just a couple more months. You're almost there, Jennifer.
Almost there.
So thank you for joining us. And for me, in whose house I bought, and I am enjoying and trying not to mess it up too much. Fermin Preciado is our city engineer.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for coming. And Ben Matlock, the one and only. Ben was almost my mentor when I got on the planning commission a few years back. He helped guiding us, showing us what we need to know and making the decisions we were making on the planning commission so we make informed decisions as the city and the community came up with all the issues that they had. So thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
And the numbers guy, Philip White, is here.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate all of you guys taking the time to join me on this podcast. So let's start with Mr. Mayor. How is Yucaipa doing? What are we doing? What is this big fuss about the Freeway corridor?
The Freeway corridor is a key to our financial revenue for our city, stability. And that's been a key that our city's been looking at for many years. And now we've kind of come to a point where we're trying to get it over that finish line.
Well, I heard you just came up with this in 2025.
No.
People are saying you're throwing this at us. I can't believe you're surprising us with all this stuff. You got nothing better to do than coming up with Freeway corridor specific plans like this?
No, it's been in the works dating back. Our financial stability and whatnot probably goes back to the 1960s. And in our Freeway corridor plan that everyone is probably most familiar with outside of our latest update is the 2008 plan. So 2008, and then we updated it in 2025. So it's been in the works for many years.
You're telling me this has been going on for almost 20 years?
Over.
Yep.
Aye. All right. So what's the fuss, Jennifer? What are you hearing in the community? What are people against? All these people standing and harassing me at the Vons and Stater Brothers after soccer games to sign referendums. What do you know about those?
Well, I don't know the people that are standing there, whether they're paid or not. But I think true Yucaipians, we have people on both sides of the fence on this item. I think they're very concerned ultimately of what's going on in the community. I think if everyone had their wish, maybe it would stay preserved as an open space. But at the end of the day, everyone knows that it costs money to run a city. It takes money to provide public safety and services to the community. And since pretty much incorporation, this has been on the mind of councils of all past. And they knew that this is a main revenue corridor that could benefit the Yucaipians and the community of Yucaipa. And so at the end of the day, we knew that, and councils knew that the 2008 plan, once adopted, and going through that for some time, and with changes in state law, in the recession, the council in 2020 realized that the plan that was adopted in place of 08 would no longer meet the requirements needed. It doesn't address the housing state mandates by the state. the infrastructure is not there to deliver it. And the gentleman to my right can probably do a much better job explaining that. But at the end of the day, we hear people on both sides of this issue. And we know there's some people that aren't supportive of the updated plan. They're angry, and we hear them. But we are carrying forward with the direction provided by council in 2020. And we feel like, and we gained input from the property owners that are part of the freeway corridor. And at this time, the update not only addresses their needs, but it addresses the needs of the direction provided by council in 2020, and it addresses the state mandates that we have to be in compliance with.
Well, and to that point, so Ben, the troublemaker in the city here. I moved to Yucaipa because I want to live in a rural place, have horses, do whatever I want to do without any traffic. I don't want more people to move here. Why are you building more houses, Ben? Allowing to build more houses. I know you're not building any houses, but why are you allowing all these houses to come here?
So a lot of it comes down to the city's general plan and the vision that was set forward by it. And so the general plan itself calls for a population of over 80,000 people at build out and a number of different amenities that are to serve those residents, as well as commercial and other opportunities to fund those services for residents. We were also confronted with state law, which establishes, every jurisdiction in the state of California has to provide its quote unquote fair share of housing, which is driven by the regional housing needs allocation. And so
that's my favorite thing you taught me about RENA.
Yep.
I love that name.
And so it's the blend of, we have our general plan that says we're going to build out to this and provide these different things as we grow up as a city. And then we also have the state law on the opposite side saying, hey, you guys do need to build those houses that you were thinking you were going to build as well. And it's the confluence of both of those, plus overall property owner rights. We have our general plan and zoning that says you're allowed to do these things. These are the visions that we have. And so city councils have kind of upheld that thing of, if you're allowed to get this is what the city was looking for. You have the right to propose that. And go
so
through
the
that
beautiful
process.
state of California tells every city, including the city of Yucaipa, how many houses you have to build and when you have to build them by.
Yeah, how much we have to facilitate through, and they have stringent requirements on what they are looking for to qualify them.
What happens if we just ignore them, do whatever we want? Tell them this is Texas, it's not California.
There's a few different recourses. One, the city can get fined for failure to comply, but the other component is decertification of our housing element, which essentially means that a project doesn't need to conform to our general plan to get approved because we don't have a conforming general plan. So someone can submit a project and we have very limited control to dictate, the density, the architecture, the feel of how that neighborhood is built. We lose all of that until we get compliance and get fined at the same time. So
not to lawyer this too much, but there's something I learned in law school called the supremacy clause. Is that something similar to what's happening here? Like, hey, Yucaipa, you could do whatever you want as long as you're not violating the state of California rules and laws, which is you must build this many houses, you must build them this quickly. Is that what's happening here?
That, I think, is probably a good description. Is the state says you need to facilitate this much housing. These are the limits of what will and won't work. But as long as you do that, you get to dictate where that ends up happening beyond that. So as long as you're making those good faith efforts, we have our own internal ability to meet that stuff. But once we don't do that, then that's when they come in and we lose that
All right.
that
So,
ability.
full disclosure, obviously I'm well informed. I got Fermin's beautiful presentation at the Rotary Club last time, after I had already gotten it a week prior at the EDAC committee that I sit on now. And I am very familiar with all of these things that you guys are doing. And I know you guys are not advocating one way or another. Your job is to inform people, and I appreciate that. And that's what we're trying to do here today, to give this side of the story. And this is an open invitation for anybody that is for the referendums. As you stated earlier, Jennifer, we don't know who these people are. I'm inviting anybody that's willing to step up in support of the referendum, in opposition of this resolution and the ordinance. that are related to the Freeway Corridor specific plan, so we can hear their version of the story and let the people decide. If they decide yay or nay, I'm sure the city staff is knowledgeable enough that will pivot and go to that direction.
I just want to say it's not us versus them. The city is a neutral party. The city is carrying out direction that was provided by city council. It is not a them versus us. The city is a neutral party putting forward a plan per direction.
And you don't own any land on that side, Jennifer. I know you're retiring
No.
in a couple of months. Are you sure
No.
you don't have a warehouse you want to build after
No.
retirement? Okay.
No, I'm gonna-
You're on the
no.
record here.
No.
All right. I appreciate that. And that's a good point. It has become very adversarial, unfortunately. On social media, a lot of people are making a lot of comments, and rumors are spreading out like wildfire, and people are being misled, which is why you guys have posted something called the misconceptions and the record on the city website. And who can tell me what this misconceptions and the record document is all about?
We put that together as a team to help the public be better informed of what the Freeway Corridor update is about. And there is a lot of information out there on social media and, friends amongst friends talking about what it is, what it isn't. And so we're just trying to provide factual educational material so people can decide how they want to vote on this if it goes to ballot. That's all we're trying to do. However people want to vote is completely up to them. What we're trying to do is make sure that they're informed and educated on what the true facts and what the true impacts are if the Freeway Corridor goes through and moves forward and if it doesn't.
So and it's interesting to say that. One of the biggest and the hottest items about the Freeway Corridor specific plan is the warehouse issues. So when it comes to the warehouse issue, who can explain and distinguish between the 2008 and the 2025 plan?
So I can probably take that. So the 2008 plan had kind of two different commercial areas identified, which is carried over with the update. It had regional commercial and business park. The business park and regional commercial in the old plan had the same uses allowed in both. You could build whatever in regional commercial, you could also build in business park. And so one of those uses is warehousing, and other type of fulfillment stuff is one of those allowable uses. And so as an example, the one that was recently constructed, the warehouse at by County Line Road, was in regional commercial, and it was allowed. The Plan Commission had approved that project. With update is looking at it going, hey, maybe we don't want our prime freeway frontage to be warehouses. We want to maintain that as retail. And so the update really focuses on making the distinction and saying, hey, where these new commercial activity, which is the warehouses and fulfillment and kind of point of sale stuff, we don't want that to be the first thing you see off the freeway. We want to keep that for the experience. And so the direction from council when we started off with update was, hey, let's get this kind of removed. There's a waste treatment plant over there, so it's not necessarily a spot where you're going to have fancy homes overlooking it. That makes more sense. And then that way the prime retail areas remain as, the spots where Yucaipians can go and shop. And that's kind of the difference between the two different plans.
So in the 2008 plan, the land use allowed for 172 acres of commercial use and 25.7 acres of business park. So combined, you're looking at around 200 acres. In the 2025 one, you're looking at 104 acres for commercial retail use and about 232 acres for business park. And you're saying now in the 2025 plan, business park is different than commercial use.
Yes.
How is that different? So what can you do in a business park that you can in commercial use, and what can you do in commercial use that you can't do in business park?
So I think the intent of the original plan was that the business park would be more industrial uses versus retail. And so that is actually codified in it. So in the specific plan, there's a list of uses in it. Logistics, fulfillment, even like medical testing and other stuff where it's more industrial type of activity is only in the business park, whereas the regional commercial is, your shopping centers, your restaurants, your movie theater, your hotel. Those are specifically called out in greater detail in the commercial versus the business park.
All right. And then if someone just goes on Google right now and you just Google the City of Yucaipa Freeway Corridor Plan issues, top key issues that they're talking about are going to be the increased warehouse zoning. People are scared of warehouse zoning. One of the things that we were talking about in 2008, Amazon wasn't what it is today. These warehouses were not as needed as they are today. Is this, or can this be another Amazon fulfillment center?
That would certainly be allowed there, yes.
And we're also talking about places like Rite Aid is shutting down, and that's national. It's not just Yucaipa. Rite Aid is shutting down. There's a few other big box stores that are shutting down because the culture has shifted, society has shifted. So a lot of people, even the kids, when they have an Amazon account, they'd rather just go and shop on Amazon than go to Ross or the Marshalls that we have here in Yucaipa.
TJ Maxx.
TJ Maxx. Thank you. Sorry. What do you have to say to the people that are trying to stay in that era, in the 2008 era of, no, let's keep it, let's save it for the small town feel versus the growth and development of the new age that we didn't choose to be here, but this is the world that we live in now?
So I can try to capture that, and some of it I think will come down to council as well. But, a lot of it is the market did shift a lot. When the original plan was adopted, people shopped at a lot more brick and mortar stores, and we've seen a lot of those disappear. Some of it's for efficiency or whatever. I personally enjoy going to a store and, the tactile feeling of feeling stuff, but my wife orders stuff on Amazon, and so that's part of, the household, and so that certainly has changed. We did try to make sure with the update in the land uses for the regional commercial that the brick and mortar stores and the other activities, that go along with that, where you can't really replicate that, online, is facilitated there, but also recognizing that total commercial area with how the market has gone wouldn't be fulfilled. And even when the original 2008 plan was written, there's either in the staff report or a memo from John McMains, who was the longtime community development director, saying that they had more commercial in that plan than they would ever build out in the first place. And so it was very focused on a land use that at the time they knew was intense beyond what probably the market would bear. And the market certainly changed a lot more since then as well.
And speaking of market change, Mr. Mayor, I want to ask you, my wife was very mad and saying, why did the mayor send Costco to Highland? So why did you send Costco to Highland? I thought they were coming here.
Well, there were talks at one point that Costco may be looking at coming to Yucaipa. We didn't send them to other communities, but when it comes down to it, the property owners can develop their land as they wish. And when a property owner is negotiating with potential tenant or buyer or whatever they may be, if they can't come to an agreement, they may move on. We can't make them develop here. And I've seen some of those comments online where people think that if we want a particular business, we can just go get them and bring them in. It's going to take some agreements, and people have to be able to work with each other. And if they're not willing to agree on certain things, they may go elsewhere and find a better deal that suits their palate better.
One of the considerations that we were talking about with some of the friends that I have about if Costco would have come to Yucaipa, they needed to spend some money on infrastructure, and they just weren't willing to spend that. But now I hear that we have a potential business that's willing to spend the money on the infrastructure. And who's that?
So Pacific Oaks is the project that we're looking at right now that has got a project that would be behind the hills here that they would put in a couple warehouses, and they're willing to pull the infrastructure, which is a little over, I think, 4 miles, which consists of going underground under the freeway and then going down Live Oak Canyon. Costco wasn't willing to do that previously. The property owner wasn't willing to do that. That's an extensive project, and it's going to cost a lot of money. They're willing to do it. We've had this freeway corridor plan in place for many years, and in that time frame, we've not had a lot of people knocking on our door willing to accomplish that task of making those facilities available to the south side of the freeway. And if they don't do it, then who would? Well, then it falls back on the city. Do we want to spend the money for that? Well, if we do that and we have to go into debt to do it, then we have to put our assets up as collateral for those things, which means that would be just about everything that the city owns. Or you put that burden on the public, and then they have to pay for it. And I don't think that's something the citizens really want to take on, is paying $40 million of infrastructure. So if you've got a business or an entity or a property owner that's willing to tackle that project and pull that through, that might be a good way to do it.
And when we talk about infrastructure, what are we talking about?
Water, sewer, power.
So they're willing to put all of that money, about $40 million of infrastructure, to get it just to their property where the warehouse is, or are we going to be able to use the rest of the infrastructure for the surrounding areas?
I think the term is called a backbone, isn't it, for me? So,
Yeah.
so that goes to the other side of the freeway, and then all these other projects, they would tap into it, and they would have to take care of their responsibility, pulling into their portion of the land and what their project is. But that would get it to the south side of the freeway, and obviously they're pulling the project for Pacific Oaks. They're obviously going to have some of that stuff going to their project. But anybody else, any other project's development, they're going to have to pay for their portion.
So, Fermin, if you can elaborate, how helpful is that to the other landowners and the city of Yucaipa to have a project that is willing to spend the money that basically Costco wasn't willing to spend?
Yeah, well, as the mayor mentioned, one of the most expensive things that's required to develop a property is the infrastructure, right? And one of the challenges here in the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan is that the specific plan area is actually split into two different areas, or in other words, it's served by two different water agencies. And now when you talk about a backbone infrastructure for a water line, you don't just require one, you require two, right? So the properties that are located on the north or west side of Oakland Road or Live Oak Canyon Road, those are served by Western Heights Water Company. The properties to the south or the east of Live Oak and Oakland Road are served by Yucaipa Valley Water District. So, in the water agencies, they have their own infrastructure requirements for the property to be developed to meet the demands of the property, as well as fire flow and all the other requirements that we have now. And the warehouse project that has been approved, they are required and they have committed to spend over $38 million in infrastructure, and that doesn't only include the water, sewer, electricity, or gas. It includes a lot of the street improvements, the drainage improvements, and other public infrastructure that will support not just their warehouse projects, but all of the other properties that are adjacent to them. And in fact, if we're talking only about the water infrastructure for the warehouse, that will support all the other properties south or east of Oakland Road on both sides of the freeway. And, we mentioned Costco earlier. The city had not an opportunity at one time to, the discussions that we had with Costco, and it wasn't the mayor that drove them to go to Highland. It was the discussion and the understanding and the realization that, hey, it's going to cost a lot of money to provide water to the south or east side of the freeway. And they were, Costco simply, my opinion is that Costco can probably build anywhere they want, and they're obviously going to build where it's less expensive for them. So that's what happened there. But with this warehouse project, that $38 million in infrastructure will benefit as far as the water, the properties on the south or east side of the property, but the electric, that will also support the Robinson properties on the west or the north side of Live Oak Canyon Road that are zoned for the high density residential and some commercial. One unique thing that Ben can touch on more is that the area north of Live Oak Canyon Road is actually designated for mixed use, which, you see a lot of areas where there's both commercial and housing on the same parcel. That seems to be a growing trend here in California. So there's a lot of opportunities there too.
So this project, Pacific Oak, is literally paving the road for thousands of homes to be built on the other side of the freeway that otherwise cannot be built today.
Or even other potential revenue sources, not just homes, but those shopping centers, commercial retail, those kind of things to come in. Because without the infrastructure right now, that wouldn't be possible.
And I appreciate you bringing up the revenue source. And Philip, you're the revenue and income and expense kind of guy and all the reports that we have in the city. Tell me about why we are not as big as Beaumont. Why don't we have all that commercial growth, all of the Redlands businesses? Why do we have to go to Redlands to shop and nobody from Redlands comes to shop here?
Yeah, so I mean, the simple answer is you think of the stores in Redlands, or you think of the stores off of Highland Springs, and there's something attracting people to go to those places and shop there. If you were saying, hey, I want to go to Home Depot, you don't have an option to do that in Yucaipa. You got to go somewhere else. You're going to Redlands or you're going to Beaumont. The reason is that, and the history of Yucaipa is interesting in that at one point that Home Depot in off of Highland Springs, that could have been in Yucaipa quite some time ago.
You're telling me the mayor sent Home Depot to Highland?
The mayor has done a lot of things in Yucaipa. No,
Our Home Depot went to Redlands. It was in 2020, a part of that referendum. They were going to build it here. And then when the referendum was successful, our Home Depot moved to Redlands.
2000.
In 2000.
In 2000. So that's the thing that people think. Why is the city of Yucaipa sending these businesses away?
We are not.
Why was that anti-business theme going on in the city of Yucaipa? How do you explain that?
It's an interesting thing. Development is it's easy to say we're going to build infrastructure now in Yucaipa, whether that's City Hall or the police station or drainage basins, and leverage future development to help pay for that. It's easy to do that. But then when the decision has to be made to actually go and develop, it's tougher because development brings traffic. It brings other things. And if there's nothing, it's better than something. And so as we go through that process, that's a tough thing. Once it gets to the point of saying, okay, now it's time to develop, it's time to pay the piper, it's tough to pull the trigger at that point. And it's an emotional thing. However, other places have done it. Beaumont did it, and based on that graph that you've got on the screen, you can see that 5 years ago when they brought some of that key infrastructure online, their sales per capita went vertical, and now they're sitting right at $40,000 of sales per capita in Beaumont. Yucaipa's down there, that thick green bar, at 8,000, and so you can see other communities have invested and pulled the trigger and done those things, and it's paid off for them as far as retail sales tax. One of the things that Ben mentioned, and the mayor hit on it and touched on it perfectly, was the trigger. There's no trigger. Once there's a backbone of infrastructure, everybody can plug into that backbone. And so can you have houses and residential without having the infrastructure? No. And is there based on the market conditions, is there enough for those home builders to invest in that infrastructure to get it across? The answer is also no, and that's why there's nothing been in the Freeway corridor, because nothing has triggered that. Currently, it's not that people wake up, it's not that the mayor wakes up and says, hey, we need warehouses in Yucaipa. It's, hey, there's a lot of, you've heard Ben and Fermin and Jennifer talk about all the different things that are included in the corridor. There's a lot of rules, regulations, and we're trying to balance it all out with the best plan possible. The warehouses pay for the infrastructure that opens up the possibility of meeting all the compliance requirements for the housing and everything else. And then it adds on the commercial and the retail side some of the ongoing the revenues that would help the city balance indefinitely into the future. So there's a lot of complexity going on, but the bottom line is there needs to be a trigger to create the backbone of infrastructure so that development can occur.
Along to kind of Phil's point, the development process is complicated. You're trying to get the stars to align where you have the infrastructure, where the market can support, the investment that's needed to get that through the finish line, and creating the culture where that makes sense as well. The city, we were able to get Trader Joe's because the infrastructure had been brought down, along Yucaipa Boulevard, much easier site, but also having, the processes in place where we were able to beat out other cities because we had this perfect storm of opportunity. And so part of with the Freeway Corridor update, because of how complicated that site is trying to get those stars to align where the different objectives that the community is looking for either for compliance with state law and our obligations there, but to, the retail opportunities and the sales stats to pay for the services that the community values. It is a complicated process, and it's trying to get those stars to align better than what the 2008 plan had in place.
So there's a concern about why did we allow this warehouse project more time to comply with the requirements that they have to build out this infrastructure. Generally, it's 3 years. In this case, they have 3 plus 3, or they have 6 plus 6.
So normally in our development code, it's 3 years plus 3 years. The freeway corridor maintains that as well, but it adds on additional extension opportunities. And really, that's just across the board for the entire freeway corridor area, recognizing that, when you have kind of larger commercial activity, so like a large shopping center versus, like a small little kind of infill spot, it just takes longer to build out. And so rather than having the clock run out and they had to, finish construction the day of, it gives them a little bit more breathing room so that if they need to find good tenants, especially on the retail side for the regional commercial, that the opportunity is there. We're trying not to necessarily rush on the commercial side, get any tenant you can, make sure you get the right one, but get the process done. And so we're trying to offer, the idea was to offer that flexibility.
So it's funny, we had a saying in the military. Now, I don't know if it applies in this situation. They used to tell us, slow down, we're in a hurry. So and it's an oxymoron thing. You have to slow down because you only get one shot at this. If you hurry up when you're in a hurry, that's when you mess things up. And it sounds from what you said is, we want to do this right. We want to do this for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades of the future of this town and community. So you guys have examined this and have spent money. So let me go back to you, Jennifer. There's some say about the city used some of its own funds to do the research into this freeway corridor plan. Tell me about that. How much money did you spend and why?
Well, in both plans in total, we've spent $2.5 million approximately for the 2008 in the 2025 update. And that's because councils of past have valued the importance of developing a freeway corridor specific plan. So it has good planning in mind of it. If not, all the property owners, they could have just pulled a trigger on whatever they wanted to put on their property. This gives a cohesive plan, so the roads tie in together. The look and feel of all the structures within the plan have the same architectural features. It's a well planned development area versus this property owner is going to put this here, this one over here is going to put housing in, and there's no cohesiveness at all to it. And so the council found value. And in addition, when they were working on the 08 plan, the thought and the investment was about, if we help at least get this plan up and it has EIR associated and it's gone through all the processes and procedures.
And EIR is the environmental
impact review. Then that's the city's investment with these property owners to say, okay, we did this major lift for you. Now start building. And the problem is we did it. We invested that amount of money and then nothing was built from 08 to 2022. And the first thing built so far is the warehouse out on County Line Road. And some of that, I think, both the issue with the 08 plan and 2025 plan is the overall cost of infrastructure and how we fund it. And you see comments on there, well, the city didn't have foresight. They should have bonded for the infrastructure. They should have put the infrastructure in. But that goes on then the backs of all the residents in the community. And it's kind of like what the mayor said, it kind of taps everything that we own in order to support the bond for it. This land is private property owned. This is their investment. The city made a huge contribution toward the 2008 and the 2025 plan. Now, at this point, if approved and moving forward, then it's the owners of these properties to start turning it into fruition.
Is it fair to say that as a result of the city's $2.2 million investment, we attracted this project?
Yeah.
I think if you had not done the studies that were required to be done and facilitated the path for a project like Pacific Oak to come, they would have never come.
Well, I think Pacific Oaks, like I said, and I think Ben highlighted on the 2008 versus 2025. In 2020, the council gave direction of, let's take these larger warehouses. And I think there's some people out there that, what is a warehouse in their mind? Some of them say, no, when we said warehouse, we meant Home Depot, we meant Lowe's, we mean structures like that. But the '08 plan even included large-scale warehousing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it says warehousing. It doesn't qualify.
Warehousing. And at the council at the time, they're like, well, we don't want these big boxes on the freeway like if you head east or west along the 10. They wanted them tucked up behind the hill. And it's in perfect relation with the Water District's brine line that's up there. Instead of having housing up there and families up there next to a brine line, the council had the foresight to say, let's put the large-scale warehouses or the warehouses, however, whatever definition you want to use, put it next to the brine line because there's amazing opportunities in the industrial sector that could tap into that brine line. And it's right here in our community that could be a great regional draw for Yucaipa.
Let's turn into another very fun subject, traffic. People are saying, why are you, Mr. Mayor, again, bringing all this traffic? Why do you want these big trucks, more traffic? This freeway corridor specific plan is going to bring more traffic. I was listening in on the last city council meeting when the gentleman brought a cassette player and played a diesel engine sound. That was fun. I had not heard a diesel engine sound for a while. But what's up with all of this?
It's right outside your window.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's
why do you want to bring pollution and traffic?
Well, there's things that in agreements you can put into development that can mitigate or address some of those things. And whether it be certain amounts of idle time, you can't have the vehicles idling past a certain time frame, or you could even put things in there that require them to be electric vehicles. So there are things you can put in place to mitigate some of the pollution things. But even in the report and things that were done by Pacific Oaks, they are going to address some of the traffic patterns. They're going to address some of the things going from the freeway down Live Oak Canyon Road. So the traffic pattern is going to change, and there will be some things that are addressed to mitigate some of that traffic. If you look at what it would have been in 2008, it's actually, it cuts down on the traffic. I don't remember the percentage. Do you know 52%. And just recently, someone on Facebook posted that they had a drone or whatever taking pictures over the freeway for the pumpkin patch, saying this is going to add to it. Well, this traffic study that Pacific Oaks did, they did their study with our highest traffic time in mind, so they could address how they build and how they move forward, so they wouldn't have an impact on that traffic and add to it. So they are specifically studying to make sure that they are not creating a bigger problem.
And they're actually going to expand that south side of the freeway's Live Oak to 2 lanes instead of 1 lane, all the way out to where the warehouse turn is going to be. Is that correct?
Yeah. And if I may add, so we had done this study for the traffic, so it was our consultants, and we made sure, and Pacific Oaks was agreeable to kind of heavy load the traffic model, for the circulation. So it was taken during the pumpkin patch season, recognizing that that's not a normal month of operation, but we as a community and wanted to make sure that that was addressed as part of the study. And so the traffic study, the total trips is less, but then the trips were also calculated on kind of a very heavy, weekend of the pumpkin patch going on.
Yeah, so currently, if you were to ask any member of the community, is the infrastructure sufficient for the pumpkin patch traffic? They'd say, no, look at my drone footage, it's not. And so that's at build out, the part of the infrastructure is to make sure that the roads are sufficiently built to handle the traffic. And what the mayor said is really important and shouldn't be lost is the 2008, the traffic patterns associated with the 2008 plan compared to the update at build out. Between those two, the traffic is 52% less in the 2025 update. It's a massive decrease in traffic at build out based on that update. And so when people say there's going to be traffic, that's a consideration between today because there's nothing there and then having something there, there's going to be more traffic. But when you look at build out from 2008 to the updated plan, it's a 52% decrease in traffic. And that's massive, and that should not be taken lightly because eventually it will be built. And based on the 2008 numbers, it would be 52% more traffic than the update.
And I will give credit to the city council when we started off the study sessions. That was one of their top comments was, hey, we got a lot of stuff going on down there. It's the freeway. Let's make sure it's not a traffic jam for everyone. And that was from the day one was always a point of consideration of how do we manage the growth and not have, a nightmare traffic situation occur as well. And so part of how the land uses are arranged to get cars off the freeway and everything like that was intentional to help achieve that outcome. That was, goal number one among many.
Yeah, and 4.5 years ago, when the city council gave staff direction to update the 2008 plan, there was three things that city council wanted to see in the updated plan. One was that the warehouses should be tucked back away from site from the freeway and Oakland Road, Live Oak Canyon Road. The second one was that we consider the traffic impacts. And the third one was the preservation of open space. And going back to your question, Chris, regarding the traffic and Live Oak Canyon Road, Live Oak Canyon Road is required to be widened to 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, south of the freeway. As development occurs, the warehouse project is required to widen Live Oak to 2 lanes on their side. Obviously, when the Robinson property develops on the other side, on the north or west side, they will be required to widen it over there. And as the mayor and Phil mentioned, when we look at traffic impacts, one of the things that we as staff do is we have to plan for the future. And when we look at traffic impacts, we have to look at traffic, what it's going to look like in the future, whether it's 10, 15, or 20 years from now, when the population in Yucaipa is 85,000 people. And one of the comments that people make to me is, there's no way that there can be less traffic with the warehouse project and that build out. And again, that's because you have to look at traffic in the future. I mean, I've lived in Yucaipa for 48 years, and I remember what traffic was like 48 years ago. And yes, it's a lot more today than it was then, but I can't look at it that way, right? And so I think that's one of the important things to consider is that at build out, when the city of Yucaipa is built out and the population is over 80, close to 85,000, the resultant traffic with a 2025 updated plan is 52% less than if we stay with the 2008 plan.
So in my industry, as a personal injury attorney, when I hire experts, I kind of expect what the experts say. There's some noise out there on social media and in town that, when we hired a traffic consultant and got traffic studies done for the in and out, they said it's all going to be fine and dandy. And you guys see the in and out line going all the way out to Baker's and spilling into almost Yucaipa Boulevard sometimes. What's the likelihood of the consultants that we got being wrong?
Well, going back to the traffic study with in and out, you have to consider the location, right? We knew the numbers or the traffic that in and out was going to generate, but we also considered that there was a couple other restaurants right next door, and the fact that Avenue E, where in and out is, still was going to be built out in the future. Right. So, and that's why with that plan, and not to make any, I guess I'm justifying that what the traffic study indicated is that we knew what traffic was going to be generated, but we knew that it could be mitigated with striping, traffic signal modifications, and the widening in front of it. So to date, we've seen, the one thing that is missing is the widening of the intersection of Yucaipa Boulevard and Hampton Road. Right. Once that is widened, that's where the mobile gas station is. Once that is widened, then that is going to operate even more efficient than it is now. But for now, to answer your question, what are the chances that the traffic engineer is wrong? Well, Ben touched on it, and the mayor touched on it too, is that the basis for the study, we used what I'll call the worst case scenario. We took the traffic counts in that area during the pumpkin patch season, and that was the basis of the traffic study, which gives us some cushion or some room to play with. And as Ben mentioned, we were extra conservative with certain other numbers that were used for the trip generation rate. So we feel that there's some just to not question ourselves in the future with the question that you just asked us. We implemented some flexibility into the study.
I do want to add to, no one knows what tomorrow ultimately brings, and so how the market evolves is still unknown. And so one of the things that was added into the plan update was kind of a relook at how things are going. So in the plan is saying, hey, this isn't a set it and forget it approach. As it builds out, we want council to reevaluate how things are working. So if there is something where it comes in and the expectations were this and it goes over here or something like that, it's not this is set in stone. It is now what we have to follow. There are still mechanisms to evaluate and make tweaks as we go on. As the world changes around us, we can still look at it and go, hey, this isn't quite working from a infrastructure or roadway kind of thing. Let's make tweaks so that as things progress on, we're not playing catch up, but we're remaining more proactive on making sure that those community needs are met as the world changes.
And speaking of the world changes, I think no matter what we do in life, generally, there's always someone who's not going to be happy with what we're doing. And speaking of someone who's not going to be happy, I love our neighbors. I love Calamasa. I love Redlands. What's the impact going to be on Redlands and Calamasa residents with this plan? Is this going to benefit the general idea of the communities in Redlands and Calamasa? Or is it going to distract and harm, whether it's through environmental changes or traffic congestions, especially in Live Oak Canyon down towards Redlands?
I guess I can kind of add in. So one, we do coordinate with other agencies. So I've had communications with City of Redlands staff and City of Calamasa. They did get a chance to respond to our environmental impact report. I think, we want to make sure that we're kind of coordinating on that. We do make sure that the impacts are kind of addressed. At the end of the day, my role is to advocate for the city of Yucaipa. So I'm less worrying about the politics of what's happening in the neighboring cities on what they're trying to do because they have their own staff and elected officials, but making sure that we're at least addressing what Yucaipa's needs are. And then as we get feedback from those other agencies, we're also being responsive to their comments and making sure that we're being good neighbors with them as well.
Yeah, we have a good relationship with all of our neighbors. One thing that I've heard a lot about the Freeway corridor, but adjacent to the Freeway corridor is the city of Calamasa, and Calamasa has significant development occurring just adjacent to our Freeway corridor, and thousands of homes going in adjacent to ours. And so when I hear the things about freeway traffic and things like that, I haven't heard a lot about the thousands of homes going in right behind the water treatment plant of Yucaipa Valley Water District for the city of Calamasa over the next few years. And there's thousands of homes going in back there. And so that's a lot of infrastructure that's going back there. There's a lot of development back there. And so when I hear about what we're doing, I think we've done really good work, and there's a whole lot of development in the communities around us. And yes, we have a great working relationship with those communities. But it's funny when, at least some of the on the Redlands side in Live Oak, when I don't hear them complaining about the 3,000 houses that are going in closer to them than the Freeway corridor from the city of Calamasa. So it's just kind of an interesting thing where, Ben said it well, where we're making sure that Yucaipa wins in this, and we're doing the best for our community, and we're aware of our neighbors, and we're being good partners with our neighbors as well, but trying to make it a win for everybody.
And to compare the numbers that you were just sharing about Calamasa's growth, not only residential growth, but they're also growing in their commercial development. Calimesa, there's 2 big warehouses on the north side of the freeway. I think as you go east, are those in Calimesa?
Those are technically in unincorporated Riverside County, but definitely do tie into Calimesa's kind of future. But the plan, I think Phil was mentioning, they have over 6 million square feet of planned warehousing in the Mesa Verde, which is right next to Yucaipa city limits, plus all the housing. So there's definitely a lot more activity envisioned in Calimesa's jurisdiction than what our freeway corridor has.
There's no referendum to stop that kind of warehousing in Calimesa, is there?
That I'm aware of.
And we always
Trying to start one? Is that what you're doing?
No, trust me, we got enough referendums. And going towards Redlands as well, there's a bunch of warehouses right off the freeway. And the specific plan that we have right now is not going to have these big warehouses right off the freeway.
No, I think when you look at the scale of what is around us, the freeway corridor specific plan update envisions 2 kind of larger warehouses, and that's it. The city of Redlands and the donut hole, which is San Bernardino County, that whole, they call it the East Valley Corridor specific plan, that whole thing was built out mostly with just warehouses. And so the numbers that they have and the conflicts that kind of originate from a whole bunch of one thing in one spot is very different from the scale of what we tried to do. We didn't plan the freeway corridor to just be rows and rows of streets of warehouses. It was much more, we're trying to get the full picture of all the different activity rather than just one type in a concentrated area.
And I've asked maybe a few of you, if not many of you, or all of you, the question about these referendums, and you've all said you don't go one way or the other. You just want people to know what's going on and vote based on informed consent. And speaking of which, so there's 2 referendums, and these 2 referendums are going to be presented based on one of them is regarding the resolution, and the other one is regarding the ordinance. Who can describe both what these 2 referendums are about, just so we know?
I think perhaps to clarify, the resolution is the one that actually does the freeway corridor specific plan update. The ordinance itself was merely a mapping cleanup item. The city has our general plan map, and in that map and how it's identified has a separate line for freeway corridor specific plan. But we have other specific plans adopted in the city, and they're not on that same map. So the freeway corridor was shown differently, and so the ordinance was to revert it back to similar to how the other plans are, and just have that map be clean and be consistent with how everything else is shown on the city's general plan. And so the ordinance really doesn't change anything for the freeway corridor. It works with the old plan and the new plan either way. The resolution is the one that actually adopts the new plan.
What do you guys want the city of Yucaipa residents to know about the referendums?
Well, I think we've done a really good job as the Yucaipa team to add the information on our city website to provide all the information, the maps, frequently asked questions, misconceptions, the slide bar to showing you the difference on the 2008 versus the 2025 update. I feel like it's a one-stop shop for people to go to the website. In addition, we have all of the study sessions and council meetings, public hearing meetings, videos on the website. They can listen for themselves, the conversations that council of current and past have said, public comments received. So they can gather the information and they can make a decision based on the facts of how they want to vote, whichever way they go. In addition, the city clerk page has all the information pertaining to the referendum and the next steps in terms of the ROV.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a few final words and we'll go down the line.
I appreciate this having us here tonight, and I think it's good to make sure that the public gets educated, as we've already spoke about. But there's a lot of misconceptions out there, a lot of things that are not being explained, and people are trying to scare people into thinking that if they sign and go through a referendum that it's going to get rid of the warehouses. And we've talked about that tonight, and we've talked about the financial revenue for our city, and we're just trying to make sure people are educated and give them the information, and so that if the referendums go through and it hits the ballot, they are making an informed decision. I think we all have concern about our city, where it's going and being sustained financially. And if this doesn't go through, then like our study session that we had a while back, then we have to figure out how we pivot and what that looks like down the road for us, and how we pay our bills and do our maintenance and provide the best services we can to our community. If this isn't the road to our financial stability, then what is, and how do we get there?
And when is this referendum going to be up for a vote? Do you know?
We are going to the city council meeting on October 27th. And the first referendum on the resolution, I think it qualified. So our city clerk will be coming to council on the 27th to lay out the process as we move forward. I wanted to kind of make mention too with what the mayor was saying. If the referendum is successful, and one of the reasons, in addition, that we had the study session, we want the residents of Yucaipa to know then how the city is going to have to pivot. And it's a pivot of not just revenues in terms of, funding ongoing city programs, public safety, everything like that. I think it's the other important issue that every city in the state of California is paying attention to, and that's those housing RENA numbers mandated by the state. So there's at least 500 affordable units, as we mentioned in the study session, that's a part of our current housing element that is up in 2029. If the referendum is successful, then our council is going to have to do the work and figure out where we're going to put those 500 affordable housing units in other locations in the community. And so we just want to make sure that people educate themselves and they know, no matter what way we go, the impacts on both sides. If the freeway corridor continues as is approved by council, we do have impacts overall. There is impacts to the community because it's growth in that area that has been beautiful hills since incorporation and pre-incorporation. But if it's successful in the referendum, the freeway corridor goes away and it goes back to '08, then the council's going to have to shift, and we're going to have to figure out where the 500 affordable housing units go.
And that's when the decertification that Ben was talking about is going to be implemented with a clause that's also known as the builder's remedy, where someone can come and build anywhere in the city of Yucaipa without any restraints on them from the city, because the state requires that kind of build out.
Well, hopefully council will pivot quick enough so that we don't have the builder's remedy. Council will be able to designate other sections in the community. So as long as we show the state we're moving forward and we have an alternative plan so that we're not preventing housing to come into Yucaipa, but we're figuring out a new solution, hopefully we'll be okay with the state. But if we don't do anything, then potentially the state could come in and say you're restricting affordable housing coming into your community.
And I think probably to that point is, it's going to come down to the goodwill of how the state views what we're doing in that determination. I mean, it removes even the builder's remedy, whether or not that gets triggered through decertification. We're not the ones that make that determination. It will be the state. And so there's a bit of unknown, to that, and we can hope that we can, through good faith efforts, keep that from happening. But that's not our call to make.
Yeah, the scary part about that, being a control freak, is the city loses control in the process. And so we've got talented staff, we've got talented planners that have spent a lot of time in their careers putting together the best possible plan for Yucaipa. Through that builder's remedy process, we lose the control, and it's essentially a free for all on the housing side. And so all of the planning that went into, hey, these are the types of things that are going to be in the corridor, it goes out the window, and it's a free for all on that. And so that's not a scare tactic. It's scary to me because I like planning. I like the control of saying this is the way that it's going to be, and that we lose that through that process. And so that part is scary. But what I'd like the voters to know, or the residents to know about the referendum, is a couple of things. It's in my opinion, it's not about warehouses. It's about the housing. We're balancing all the different requirements, focusing on the housing. That's a serious problem, and the housing makes sense in the corridor. And that's what we're trying to do. The warehouses are a mechanism to open up the housing and meet the housing requirements. And so that's what I want to make sure. Yes, I want everybody to be educated and know, but I don't want them to be lost in the emotion of warehouses or no warehouses. The big issue on our side that we see is housing. How do we solve the housing? And so that's a big part.
Like Phil and Ben and Jennifer, the mayor, mentioned, our role as city staff has been to update the plan. And then once the plan was updated and approved by city council, now our job is to make sure that we share the information with the public, and that the public understands the facts and that they have all the information. And, that's our role. And, as a Yucaipa resident, I would just encourage people to, if your concern is about the warehouses, and make sure that you look, go to the city's website and educate yourself on what this referendum, how it impacts or warehouses, or what that means. If it's housing, like Phil said, I agree. That's one of the most important things with this. Make sure you understand how it affects housing. And, also important is, the financial or the economic outcome from a plan like this. That, we've talked about how this would be a good opportunity for the city to be able to afford and pay for the services that the citizens expect from the city, those public services. So, be inform yourself. And if you have questions, go to the website or contact City Hall.
Yeah, that list is not static. We can add to it if there's an unknown. People have questions. We're happy to make sure that people have the right information, so we can update that list as necessary.
I love it. And once again, Mayor Thorpe, thank you so much for coming out and joining us. Interim city manager for a couple more months, Jennifer Crawford, city engineer, Fermin Preciado, our city planner, Ben Matlock, and our finance officer, Phil White. Thank you so much for all of your time. And for those of you that are interested in the other side of the coin, if there are anything that we did not cover during this podcast with all of our city officials and pertinent people regarding the Freeway corridor, reach out to me, reach out to us. Let us give you the voice. Let's see who you are, what your thoughts are, and let the city of Yucaipa residents decide and vote. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.